All right, truth seekers. It is Thursday, and yesterday we had a great conversation. We was talking about Aleister Crowley and how they was talking about how the elites, or he was showing how they create what we call a moonchild. So if you was here yesterday, you know we were going really deep into that, and I didn't get to finish. And a lot of you definitely wanted me to go into the other parts of it, and I'll do much as that I can today as well. And it's going to start off today right where we left off, but in more of a real fashion of what is happening. And so I think that just understanding what exactly is a moon child. And if you look at some of the definitions, in fact, I'll go ahead and Google one for you here. And so that you can understand the language of this. And it's important because we're talking about an esoteric thing here. And if you start thinking about it, supposedly a moon child is supposed to be deeply intuitive, emotional, and spiritual person who feels a strong force from the moons and the cycles. Now, that's the zodiac size of it. But let's go into Crowley and how he depict what a moon child is. Now, of course, in the occult, they were saying that this is a ceremonial, magical thing. And what they're saying is that they're saying that this child is a crafted vessel, and they're able to pull into the 3D to 4D, and then they were able to come back and, go deeper in putting this soul into the fetus or whatever they want to do. Now, that kind of goes back into what we call reincarnation. So if you start thinking about that a little bit, we'll do that. Now, right at top of the hour at 6 o'clock, you will be going into a different live stream, and hopefully you'll hop out of there and hop in it, but here on the channel. We're going to be talking with, of course, once again, Brother Yosef Dreamwise and his wife, Desiree. We are talking about money and, of course, in love, which is stronger, which is which. Should you share your banking account? So do you share your banking account? How important is money to a relationship when you're looking for true love? So we'll be discussing that. And remember, all of this, that road is leading to our August 8th event that we're having here in Dallas. You can live stream it or come in person on What Does Love Got to Do with It? So we'll be doing that as well. So let me get right into where where we left off yesterday. One of the premier thoughts and things that when it came down to this moonchild stuff and really understanding what are we dealing with, one of the main things was think about this child. What did they do? We talked about the preparation. We talked about how they put it into the fetus. We talked about how they separated the child in the trauma and how they stuck pins and needles and through the mother's stomach while the baby was still in there to cause trauma and then create this trauma bond. Now, when the moon child is born, this is where we get ready to get left off. We didn't get into that as much. They make sure the people or the programmers, as we talked about yesterday, they make sure that the programmer, that whoever they decided to put in front of this child who's going to be the programmer, is the only and the first voice that this child hears. Now, this is probably very important because I was tying it into real life yesterday, and not just real life. I was tying it into community life, how I grew up and how a lot of this stuff is happening in our communities. So if the elite knows that it is important for that child to hear the first voice, the first programming, imagine what's happening in our communities when, maybe the first voice is Kendrick Lamar or Drake in the stomach, while the mom was sitting there jamming with music, or the baby comes out, the baby's at home, ain't been there for about a week, and they're playing all this music and wonder why this baby is waking up bopping, and they're thinking, oh, my good baby got rhythm. No, well, that's Kendrick's baby now. You get what I'm saying? Because that first voice and the things that it's hearing. So jokingly as that could be, but obviously it could be a real life scenario. If they know they're doing this to program kids, why are we not seeing what is happening in real life while we're having our children out there doing the things? Now, this programmer is considered what they call the great Dame, D-A-M-E. It's a senior female authority within the hierarchy. So they already got their heart. In course, if you go back to old times, we have what we call our the mother or the pack or whatever you want to call this person, or I don't know, a deer or whatever it is. It's the one who is that one. But see, over the following months, when they do this with these children, it is the programmer's job. Now they start out. Remember, they already traumatized this baby in the fetus. Remember, they've already done this. They traumatized the mother, so they can send that adrenaline down into this child to make this venom of trauma get into this baby's system and everything else. Then, when it comes out, the programmer talks to the child in what they call a loving, cooing tone. Now, I don't know what that sounds like. I can't tell you if it's Roderick, Roderick, you go, boy. I don't know, but if that was it, I would like to hear it like that. You know what I'm saying? Just you go, boy. But the whole point is it's a cooing tone, and this is how they do it. But it only it's supposed to be the only most soothing and loving language is permitted at this stage. So they're not saying that, you big dummy or whatever they want to do at this point. It's just, I mean, imagine, what could you get me to do talking to me like that? You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just amazing if someone can figure that out. But the other part of this is the child is being bonded to the programmer. Okay. The child is being bonded to the programmer. And if you go into this book, like I said, we can do this. Somebody Catman do. I heard that. So, but you get what I'm saying. You just have to go into the book, how Illuminati create what they call the mind slaves. Okay. There's another character named Joseph Miguel or Migueli or whatever. So you can kind of go ahead and look this person up, get some of this information to kind of see where we can go with that. And but just kind of, this was considered the Nazi doctor. All right. And of course, if you want to get that information, again, go into the book. He was considered the angel of death. Now, why would they do this? Okay. And okay, so he's from that ostrich or whatever. You can go look that up. But anyway, supposedly he was the best expert at this type of bonding. And like I said, you got the book. I have it right here. Some of the stuff that I've taken out of there will kind of give you this take on doing that. So one of the main things, though, is how they conduct this. Now, why is it so important that the first point of this voice needs to be this type of programmer or this sound? Now, remember, they'd already took this kid away from the mother. And so they're not giving the mother any point in this. But once again, if you go back to Joseph, he was the man who conducted medical experiments on Jewish children, on twins, and the disabled, okay, in concentration camps. So this goes all the way back to where the Nazis was studying all kinds of insidious things that they were doing to people. And it was just pretty much kind of like, open game. But they all was testing and stuff. And then you got to remember the Nazis didn't really go away. If they just migrated to a place called this place. And anyway, he also talks about the, a lot of areas to where you can create this particular bond when you're talking about this. Now, we already discussed it yesterday. We know we're talking about trauma bonding. Now, let me make this point because I said it right before we end the show yesterday. Premature babies that are born premature, make no mistake about it, these are probably some of the most strongest children on the planet because they had to endure so much to be here, to survive. This is why they choose to make them preemies on purpose, because they're able to instill this fight to live, this whole thing. Because remember, the baby is taken out of the environment. It has to grow. It has to think. The bodies have to, the whole, this unit of body needs to function at some point. And so you got to think about how they have, this is why they pick this. Okay. So if you were a preemie or you had a preemie, just think about it. That these kids are strong. In order to survive, to go through sitting in these incubators or wherever they do and breathing and trying to survive air and all of this stuff, they are already fighting the minute they got here. And so those become some very powerful beings over time. And this is why, again, they invoke this and they look for this and everything else. There was most notable for this doctor in Miguel or Megingo, Mengele, and they was just talking about how this thing probably how he disappeared. But if you remember Operation Paperclip, they brought all of the Nazi scientists over here into the United States to continue their work under the CIA and under the U.S. military oversight. And so this is probably how we got NASA, Warner Brown, all of these people, when that conquering happened, came over here. And they were already was ahead of us in UFO technology because they had the Bell, all of these things was going on. And so this was really kind of, something that that Nazi regime, who did a lot of insidious things, was brought over here with their stuff. And I'm just kind of repeating that to you. Now, also remember that this particular program, and I said it yesterday, became the foundation of the Monarch programming, MK Ultra, the butterfly, remember the butterfly net, one of the names of this program. And so it was just rebranded. Everything that they was doing over there in the 1900s, early 1900s, they rebranded. And often I would say it's happening again here. We think that MK Ultra is over with. It's just probably rebranded. That's one of the things that I would say that most people know. That is the case, that has been rebranded, and it's one of these things. So now think about some of the name of the churches I go to or went to back in the day, the Potter's House, and they're talking about the clothes, the cloth and all this thing. But the program that they was doing this was about the child, and they would always say that the child was a piece of clay. So how many churches out there who are shaping people, but they're under the regime of these other countries and everyone else? And so they are saying they are the potters. They got this from the MK Ultra. They was doing this out there. And so you're just looking at how they're shaping. And just remember, they are the potters, and the preemies cope with pain through what they consider something naturally or a dissociative trance state. So this is the plan. And as bad as it can get, it really does. Because again, you're talking about speaking to a preemie. So if they got the right cool voice, as I was, mimicking earlier, then it's a hypnotic voice that takes direct advantage of this, right? They know that this voice, and maybe this is how we all are. You can probably get someone out there with a knife and about to just unalive some people, and the right person comes up and just say, "Oh, put the knife down, baby. Put it down, honey." Or the same thing as Leonidas, who in 300 wasn't about to push the dude over the thing until the girl said, or just gave him a look, "Yeah, take him out." It's something about the voice. And I know there's some people out there that has some beautiful voices. And there are some people that got some voices you can't even listen to. You don't even want to. You're like, I just can't stand it, But it's something about the power of that voice. And obviously they had already known. So just imagine all these elements in our lives, the voice, the programming, the things that we can move society with, and a soft voice. And so I think that's something that we might talk about in our relationship seminar. I'm gonna make a notes of that. Does a voice matter? Do you want a soothing voice, or you want, your mate to be like, yo, 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 So yo, 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 come on in here and get this tonight. Yeah, I don't know. So, but again, back on track, I'm just saying that speaking the way they have it in hypnotic tones, the voice become more real to the child than the child's own sense of self. This is what they're saying as a program. Let's think about that statement for a minute. The voice becomes more to this child. It becomes more real to the child than the child's own sense of self. And like I said, so you guys are in the chat. So does voice matter? I see Panther saying it does. Does voice matters. Let's think about this. In fact, how much does it matter? Let's go deeper with some of y'all answers. Get involved. Let me know, because I don't know. I mean, okay, we know that Barry White was always known for his, yeah, baby, babe. Everybody was into this Barry White thing. Or you can be into the old girl that was on, what's that old Fight the Power? Mookie. Mookie. I don't want that. You don't want that, But at the same time, TK said, yeah, it's a frequency. So I guess at that point it does matter, and you want to, I guess so. I'm just the one to say it too. I think it matters, and it'll just be something we can do, because the last thing you want to do is be just sitting there talking to your girl and be like,
hey baby, do you want to come on here and get some of these grits? Yeah, I got something for you, baby. Come and get this. Mo, baby, mo.
So that's it. So I think it will just makes that kind of sense that you can go there. All right. So again, the program is literally controls the bottle that they give the kids, is warm, the assimilation, every resource the kid needs to survive. The Illuminati are conditioning this child to perceive the controller as God. Okay, they're saying it's as God, and from the first second it opened his eyes, it's not seeing his mother anymore. It's not seeing it. So imagine all of these mechanisms that some people take for granted in raising their children or bringing kids into this world, that they are using these things. Now, here's where it gets a little more tricky. And listen to me where we're getting ready to go with this section. They then move from that cooing voice, the warm milk bottles, all the things. And when this eyes begins to open, and if you get into this book, you visualize rooms with babies, okay? And then instead of them being there watching the baby, they put in what we call subliminal tapes that are used to teach the kid from birth, all right? And this is important because they know how to put the right messaging. Now, we know NLP, all this stuff exists as an adult. But imagine a child that's been trained to kill from day one. This child has been programmed with subliminal messages if they want to create this humanitarian candidate, something that don't have feelings, something that don't. And now, I'm going to keep tying it into a community sense, because now it's starting to make more sense to me, because when you go to someone's house and they got a newborn baby in the other room, and on this side, they got Luther Vandross playing, or they have, NWA, and the kid is 2 or 3 years old. And how many kids right now riding in the cars with their parents and they're listening to some stuff, shoot, kill, blah, blah, blah. And the kid is bopping his head and the mom think the kid is dancing with him. That kid is programming to get to be a killer if they wanted to. All it needs to trigger. It could be a musical tone in a song that's hidden that can play 10 years from now, because we're letting this stuff happen. And I'm saying it because they're doing it purposely. And there's people could be having it done unpurposely, if that's even a word. Do y'all feel where I'm going with this, right? Do y'all see where I'm tying this in? Although it's a treacherous thing, but is the programming still happening in real time? Unbeknownst to anyone. Should you shield these kids from this world at an early age? For a long time, by the way. Why wouldn't we do that? Why not we're doing that? Well, maybe we don't know, but at the end of the day, I'm saying if they know to do it on a high level to create the specimen that they want, you should be able to program your child to be one of the best kids out there if that's what you want them to do. And if you ain't got time to parent him, if you ain't got time, you working 24/7, put in a tape with your voice, teaching your kid, and let it play with some headphones. I don't know, but don't let the daycare do it. You know what I'm saying? Be like, hey, I want my kid to look out there, but just put the headphones on though. You know what I'm saying? Look, and you could be playing a tape telling the kid while he's sitting in the daycare, look at them fools. Mama wants you to look at them fools. You're not a fool like them. Could you imagine that though? You know what I'm saying? Having your kid just sit there program while you in the daycare just bouncing. Look at them fools. Yes, there are some fools. Look at them. They ain't got no sense at all. You will not turn out like that. You will not turn out like that. So you get what I'm saying? Why not? If it's real, why not? They're doing it already. You get what I'm saying? So it's like we should think about those things and think about what is happening. Now, again, they're saying the goal is to teach the kid to read and speak far earlier than normal development would even allow. And the document in this book confirms that children who can read at 6 months have been produced with the Monarch program, 6 months old. All right. Controlled environment. You got kids who can read, and we got some people's kids can't read at 6 years. Imagine how far behind they are because we don't understand what to do. But what if we take the esoteric knowledge? Listen to me closely. And I've been harping on this for quite some time if you know me. What if we take the esoteric knowledge and do good with it and you use the same principles with a good backing behind it? Because it don't mean it's evil. They use the tactics. What they're putting in it is evil. The soul that they're putting in it is evil. What if you can conjure up a good soul out there or something from the past? I don't know. What if you could? I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not saying that I understand the concept, but the baseline tells me if they can program it with BS over here, you can program your kids with good S over here. Sugar, honey, iced tea, by the way, is what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying. Why wouldn't we want to do that? Why we're not doing it is the question. Maybe you don't know, but some of you know now. So we can look at this thing. Someone says my cousin started reading at the age of 3. That means they're capable. We know that they're capable. We know that this is a capable thing for them to do. All right. And we're going to do that. So we'll be talking in a minute. I think it's a good time for me to use my shea butter, and we'll talk about that a little later because I see some ash on my skin here. So I'm saying that we're talking to controlling environment, what they're doing. And cues, they use cues that place into the child's mind at this age. They're targeting all 5 senses simultaneously. Listen, this is how they can this is in the book, how they Illuminati create what they call an undetectable mind slave or controlled slave. Children are easier to hypnotize than adults. Why? I'm glad you asked. Because the children, they are saying, requires a different technique when it's preverbal. All right. Children are a lot easier. Everybody goes after the kids for everything. All right. And so let me give you some of the examples of what I'm talking about. The preverbal techniques. We're talking rubbing. Who don't want to be stroked as an adult, though? Stroking, patting, panting while speaking in control. Roderick. I mean, imagine what you can get me to do talking like that. You get what I'm saying, right? So, but we're talking to non-variable tones here. So this is happening, but I'm only saying this with the human as an adult, but they're doing this to program. And these are the reasons the Illuminati deploy a gentle female. Let me say that again. But being a programmer, not a male. The first voice they're not hearing is not man. It's not, masculinity. It's femininity. They're doing it at this stage. So I have to say to my females who is listening, the power that you possess, the power of your soothing voice, the power of the context that you can do. You not only bring us into this world, but you are the first of the program. You are. And with that being said, you ought to be ashamed of yourself at all these fucking killers running around here. These badass kids. I see them at the mall. They're all over the place. These kids are just jumping around. You ought to be, no, okay, I'm just kidding. But the whole point I'm saying is you all are very powerful to the generations of this. You get what I'm saying? So, and it is proven in the world of secret societies. All right. So imagine in the household, the separation of that. Now, of course, the men stuff later, but when they're programming these kids, and they're saying this. Now, the other side of this is how they create these little monsters, because at some early point at the stage, the children is taught not to cry. They want to take the emotional stuff out of it. But why do that? Why set emotion and then change it? I don't know. There's got to be something about this. Why bring them into this world? Now, remember, they already attached a soul to this thing from the fourth dimension. Maybe that's what it is. And you're talking about this in pretty much. Now, it gets a little more nasty here, by the way. People, they began to place tape over these kids' mouth while it's told no repeatedly. Repeatedly, it's told no with the index finger. Now, is that no is going to mean shh or whatever? But and again, the child receives other stimulations too during this process. But we're talking about they tape the mouth and then told no while this crying process. Then the child receives approval exclusively when it does not cry. It is trained to not cry at this point. Now, if you don't think that works, if you don't think trauma works, play along with this skit that I have right now for you personally that just came to my mind and see, does this skit works? See, is it a problem? So imagine this. A kid sits over here, your kid, I'm just talking about whoever, and you can classify it as yours. All of a sudden, the kid is doing something and it cries because you just gave it a whooping, right? How many of you do that? How many of you whooped your kids? Because you still need to, but if you don't, But what if you did? Now, play this out because lots of people do it. I've seen it in hundreds and hundreds of cases, okay? They whoop the crap out of the kid to get them to straighten up. Okay, that's first form of discipline. Illuminati does this crazy trauma and then they tape the mouth up for the kids, but you're not that. But somehow you were taught right after you whooped this child and you beat them down, to get them to conform like they should anyway. Then the child is crying because that's the result of the whooping. And someone looks at him and said, now shut up or I'll whoop you again for crying. How many times have we seen that? Stop crying. And the child is confused as F-U-C-K. Like, look, you just beat the crap out of me. I'm crying because it hurt. Now you're telling me to be quiet and you're going to whoop me again if I don't stop crying. Okay, so I'm gonna take the word beat out of it. Discipline, because some of y'all get a little emotional. I get it. I'm with you. You discipline the child harder than normal. Okay. But then they turn around and be like, be quiet. You've seen it. You've seen it in the malls, in the doctor's offices. You've seen it everywhere. Where the mother or father be, shut up. Now, if you don't stop crying, I'm gonna whoop you again. And the child is like, are you crying? What? And now you have developed a animal that is growing up, and you wonder why they don't have no emotions as a young kids, why they don't care about certain things, why they're doing. Now the Illuminati is doing it. How did that program slip out the lab and get into our household? That's the question. You get what I'm saying? Because it's the same program. It just looks different. How did it get into our households? How did we take the slave mentality of this program to get into our households the same way? So witness it for yourself. Go out somewhere where a bunch of kids, playground, wherever, McDonald's, wherever, and let the kid get in trouble. And then all of a sudden, and then next thing he gets a whooping. And if he don't shut up crying first in a minute or two, the parent comes back and say, now you better be quiet. Stop crying. It's like, it's the same program that they use to disassociate these kids to turn them into mindless NPC slaves. And you wonder why it's running rapid in the community, because the program is done got outside the lab and we're doing it ourselves. They don't need to do it anymore. And I know nobody's going to admit to this, but it's happening. You've seen it happen. Some of you have done it yourself. I've done it probably when I was young, raising kids, didn't know. I don't know, but you see it. It happens out there all the time. And I'm just saying. So the obedience is the only path to what they call positive response. It's total rigid, but it's absolute obedience. It's conditioned right there, at the neurological level before the child can form a conscious thought. Again, it's happening. This is what we call behavior modification on a newborn or an infant or someone else. It's happening in the daycare. You got your kids in a daycare where they discipline those kids and then get them more disciplined if they're not quiet because the daycare worker don't want to hear it. Put a camera in there. I guarantee you see your kid being programmed to be some type of animal, and when you think they're not. But you feel it. You see it when you bring them home and you be like, why are they acting this way? And it takes 3-4 hours to calm them down. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Maybe I'm off today. Maybe it's Thursday and it should be a Monday. Maybe because I don't drink, I need to start drinking. It may level me out. I don't know. But I do know that something is not right. All right, so let's continue. I'm not here to teach you how to raise your kids. I'm not Grandfather Rod because I got gray hair and none of that. I'm just telling you what the Illuminati does and how it got out the lab, just like everything else. They say get out the labs, and then we catch it, and next thing you know, we got a pandemic. Now we got a pandemic of crazy kids too. You're going to say. So the occult nurses, they have them at hospitals night shift. They got people everywhere, by the way. And they, some of them allow the mothers to bond in these premises. Sometimes they do it in a more of a satanic way, but they're satanic practitioners too. And many of these program multiple themselves. Now, we're not going to get into how they then get and start programming what we call alters and mind splits, and what you see when these people turn a certain age and they start shaving their hair. And this is what happens later. You've seen it in all of these celebrities because the mind begins to fight back at that particular age. They can't really contain it, but it's so much conflict. It's that you see it every time around the same age. It's a theory or a hypothesis. Well, it's a theory now that is working. So they're doing this. And so look out for that, wholeheartedly is what I'm talking about. They, again, they got all these people working in hospitals. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. They got people, their network access points is everywhere in the medical infrastructure. They have these people in the churches. They have people, they are able to intercept their kids, our kids, anytime they want, because we don't vet all of those situations. All right, we're in a conscious community, so it just feels okay for my kids to be here. Well, they can construct that too. They can construct it. Be surprised. Why don't you whatever we want to call it, whenever you're in the military or you have a clearance and they want, what is that? When they debrief your kids like a military apparatus after they come from the playground or from school, and make sure you get every little innuendo. And let me give you an example. And it may not make sense. My child at the time when she was young she went to school at 3.5, 4 years old. She graduated when she was 16. Okay. So intelligent girl, come from a good lineage, because I make pretty babies. So my breeder skills is good. So for those, if I make another child, just let you know, I make good babies. And so they ended up, we took her to another school, which is supposed to be this gifted school. It was in a predominantly Hispanic neighborhood. And so she started failing like crazy, and we couldn't figure it out. And I was like, no, this is supposed to be a gifted school. And she's blah, blah, blah. Okay. And I'm like, okay, my daughter is, and I'm having meetings, and didn't dawn on me to talk to the kid. I'm talking to the parent, not the parents, but the principal, and they're telling about this, and she may need to be, I'm like, now I started looking around. It was a predominantly Hispanic school. We just moved in that area. And I couldn't figure out. They had Spanish teachers, they had whatever. And one day I turned to my daughter. We was in a meeting, and I said, hey, do they speak Spanish in school? And, because someone just told me to ask the question. And the teacher is livid. The principal is looking at me like I just asked the dumbest question in the world. My daughter looked at me like, Dad, you're stupid. And she said, no, they don't speak Spanish. And I'm like, oh, fuck. And about 30 seconds later, she said, but they speak Mexican. I said, oh, now why she's failing. they are speaking Mexican. She doesn't know the language. And I thought that was so to a point. And reason I brought that up because it's something about the learning. It's something about, of course, if you're not understanding none of this stuff, and it just kind of, and I'm still trying to figure out why I brought this story into it now because I lost my outline just right quick. But the whole point, whatever the programming was, we'll come back to that. But it was a great experience. And debriefing your kids. That's what I'm saying. So you want to debrief your kids. You don't know how they see the world, is where I was going with that, in these scenarios. Okay. You don't know how they see the world in these scenarios, and you should go and look at that. Debrief them, baby. Don't just ask them, how was your fucking day? You need to have some access points, some manipulative answers to get to something else, because they're seeing things, they just don't see it and understand it, the same apparatus of thought the way we do. But they know it ain't right. Just try it and see what you get. Just try it. That's all I'm saying. So moving back along, they have these people everywhere. You know, we're talking about the Illuminati, from the nurses to churches and access points in all types of areas to intercept and to monitor these kids that they're programming. Code words everywhere, you know, and they're doing this. And it's but here's where I'm going with this. And I know this is alleged. I'm saying this allegedly, okay? For those of you who are whatever, but allegedly, because they have these nurses all in these places, hospitals, how many people have been told that allegedly their baby they just gave birth to is not living because it was a preemie and never made it back into the room? Think about that. I had a lady who was in our group who said all kind of treacherous stuff happens like it. I don't know, allegedly. I'm using those words. But imagine that. Why don't somebody do some research? See if there's claims out there, hospitals or list or data or whatever, that this is going on and they got a high risk of preemies being there. Or it's a place where they tell you got to go because you're going to have a preemie. And they're missing because they're important, because they're really important. They want them. They need them. You get what I'm saying? But they tell you, it was whatever they call it, sleep or stillborn or all kinds of stuff that they use. And you hear it all the time. People said the stories all the time. There are some people have multiples and wonder why they think it's something wrong with themselves. Maybe it's a bloodline that they just keep taking it. We don't know, allegedly. We'll keep using those words. But just know that they explain, it can't breathe, or they'll say, it can't breathe. Let me take it in here, walk it. It's a lot of stuff, people. It's a lot of stuff. And so be careful with that, is all I'm trying to say as we continue down the story of it. All right. So I know we got a bunch of you in here, and we're doing part 2 at 6:00 in about 20 minutes Central Time. We'll start a new live stream here. You'll see it in there. Brother Yosef, Dreamwise, myself, we're going to be talking about money. What does money got to do with it? Do you get married, love somebody for money? Is money more important than love in a relationship? Do you share banking accounts? What money have destroyed when it comes down? Can you marry or date a broke person? Broke as in they just don't have no money, but they get everything else you want. How important it is to you. Or would you settle for someone else because they got paper but treat you like crap? So we're going to be talking about that in a minute. And also a shout out to the people that reached out yesterday for your drives. You are a very not only important person, because you got some information that the world needs to be preserved, and that you did it. And for those of you who didn't, who say you were going to do it, that's natural, But the ones who did, you're on your way to have some specialized knowledge, some crazy knowledge, but make sure you put it in safe deposit box for the future. It's not for you, it's for the other generations, so that they can remember and find their way back to the truth. So make sure you do that. And for those that reached out, so they went to my email, rod@roderickmartin.com. They already knew it was an investment involved, and they invested in themselves. One person specifically just said, I know to invest in myself. So we're going to do that. So let me continue as best as we can in the next 5 or 10 minutes, and then I'll hop off to be ready for our 6 o'clock show. And then tomorrow, I'm working on a video to put into the Patreon. It won't be live, but I'm going to put some content in there. And then I'll check on everybody in there to make sure when there's doing the out-of-body experience. So we'll do our first test with one another over the weekend. So we're going to do some stuff. So, and if you haven't got an opportunity, you want to go there, patreon.com/Truth versus Authority, the 33 parallel. I'll look at some questions here in the chat. Someone said, I got you. Lambo says, let me just read this and put it on the screen. He said, I got you. The teacher says there is one right answer and everyone else is wrong. There's always more than one answer. Hey, yeah, just check on it, man. Yeah, check on it. And my mom moved me out of Southern California in the 80s because she found out they only taught Spanish. Okay. Yeah. And listen, let me tell you something. You don't hold the teachers responsible for that. Because if you're a teacher and you're teaching your minority of your, group and community, and you see that these people are coming in and they have no one, you should do your job. And you should say, okay, I got this job over here, but these kids are predominantly here and they're coming across whatever their parents may be bringing them into the country. I'm going to do my job to help out. I wasn't upset with them. Because I probably would have done it if I was in an African school and they was, I don't know. You're still going to do your part because you feel that you want to pay that back. All right. So the programming part here, and they talk about it, they keep in mind because it's about we're talking about the bond as we get back to where we're going with this. And it's all about the attachment. And again, it's not a gift. This is not carried. This is a weapon being loaded. Okay. This child that they are programming is a weapon being loaded. 100%. However you want to look at it, one way or the other, it is a weapon. Oh man, my clock is off. Okay, I gotta go, y'all. I'm looking over here for an hour, but it's already 6 o'clock. They texted me like, "Hey, we in here." Let me do it now. All right, so I got to run. I love y'all. See y'all later. Come back in about 2 minutes and jump on our live stream. Let's go. All right, so I got
UFOs, UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena,
unidentified aerial phenomenon.
Who are they? Where are they from? And what is their intent?
all questions that immediately come to mind with the mention of UFOs. A Pentagon report is detailing a dramatic increase in UFO sightings, more than 350 since 2021. Many of them are explained as being drones, birds, or weather events, but about half of them remain unexplained.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA.
My gosh.
They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude.
This video taken by the Navy showing what he describes as pyramid-shaped UFOs flying over the USS Russell off the San Diego coast in July of 2019. The Pentagon has since confirmed that the video is authentic.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection. Late this afternoon, a bulletin from New Mexico suggested that the widely publicized mystery of the flying saucers may soon be solved. Army Air Force officers reported that one of the strange discs had been found and inspected sometime last week. Our correspondents in Los Angeles and Chicago have been in contact with Army officials endeavoring to obtain all possible late information. Joe Wilson reports to us now from Chicago. The Army may be getting to the bottom of all this talk about the so-called flying saucers. As a matter of fact, the 509th Atomic Bomb Group headquarters at Roswell, New Mexico, reports that it has received one of the discs that landed on a ranch outside Roswell. A disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico, and the rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazil is the man who discovered the saucer.
There's footage and records of objects in the skies that we don't know